the older generation, if they're not willing to lead or they're not leading the process, what do you do as the farm kids or the successor of that as well? Like, how do you spur on the conversation or get the ball rolling?
I think I mentioned it earlier. I think there's three things to do. So the biggest reason I think why the older generation don't hand over the business to the younger generation is trust. Right? Trust that they know what they're doing, trust that they have no idea, trust that they don't understand the money. And I've lived that in numerous businesses. I've seen that. So I think for the younger generation, if you actually start, as I said earlier, working on your leadership, but communication is number one. Learn how to communicate, not only with your parents, with your staff. Because if you start asking the right questions, which isn't, oh, Dad, when can I take over the farm? But it might be, all right, Dad, how have you successfully managed to grow this business from 100 cows when Pop died to now a 3,000 cow dairy farm with indoor shedding and everything? How have you done that? Tell me your story. How have you actually done that? And that's a very different question to, I want to take over the farm. Actually start pulling, because very often I find the older generation will not appreciate how hard it's been for them to get to where they've got because they've forgotten about it. And I think the younger generation sometimes don't appreciate how hard the older generation have had to work to get to where they've got to. So I think if you're the younger generation, start asking more about the hows and the whys. Why do you do this? Why do we plant the crops every year at that time? Why do we keep turning tractors over every 3 years? Why do you not employ more staff? Why do you spend 7 days on the farm? And start asking the questions. And over a period of time, when someone starts becoming inquisitive, human nature is actually, people love to talk. The older generation love to talk about how hard it was in their day and how they've built this and we've built this and we did this on nothing and we've built it on number 8. Well, we've now got this great business. And if you start getting them to open up, that starts building trust. It starts showing that you're interested. And then it starts going on to, well, how do you manage the books, Dad? And by asking those questions, you're going to start pulling them into that thing. Or if that's not getting anywhere, you start asking the other questions. What do you, Mum and Dad, what do you want to do when you turn 70? And often Mum's quite the good one for that one. You know, do you want, because Mum's always the one that sat there in the background, holding the business together, calming Dad down, keeping the kids fed, keeping everything account going on behind it. And everyone knows their parents differently, but you'll know the one that's more of the emotional than the hard. And you start going, all right, Mum, where do you want to be? And then she can start having those conversations. Look, Fred's really interested in taking over the farm. He's not ready yet. Well, how do we get him ready? You know, and start having those conversations. And yeah, and that's part of, I mean, I'm not flagging it, but next week I'm launching Align Generations, which is a new business I've set up with another guy called Eric, who's got 50 years in finance, and I've got 50 years in behavioral and people and human things. And we're actually coming out into the market and looking to get into businesses at a much earlier stage, because I don't think there is a support out there for the young people to ask those questions. I don't think there is a support out there for the young people to understand how, well, we've got a business that's got $50 million in assets, but the cash flow is so poor, we don't see how we're going to be able to manage debt and all those questions. But we're actually providing a service that can ask those questions, that can give solutions to those questions. We're actually empowering the people by getting in early enough. And when we do that, we actually start building trust with these people. And so the idea is not to come in and be transactional like a bank or a lawyers. They come in, they give you the paperwork, they give you the structure, you sign on it, and then they walk away. We're trying to align ourselves, hence the name, with businesses, take them into the succession journey, and then stay with them after the succession journey to start with the next problem. Because if you've done it once, our challenge now on this farm, there's 10 grandchildren. We're now setting up for at least one or two of those that may want to be interested in coming into the business. So succession never ends. It's not a one-off thing. And I think that's why I see a huge gap. And it comes back to the concept that I just have so much faith and belief and energy for this younger generation to actually go on and do incredible things in agriculture. They just need a vehicle that allows them to get in there and give their parents confidence that they have the ability to take the next step. But it all comes back to, don't look at succession as succession, look at it as leadership.